Metre combined oval racetrack and flat Calder circuit to the left of the picture that we're using for this third and fourth heats, round 2 of this 10th Swann Insurance International Motorcycle Series today. Next weekend, the final round at Lakeside Circuit near Brisbane, now that Surfers Paradise track has closed and the bikes now warming up for what is shaping to be a very tense race, a very interesting one technically for ABC viewers. We will have mini-cam, we hope, on 2 bikes. There's been quite a lot of problems because they're in a very violent environment on these bikes with vibration and so on, and there you see it. And that's due to people like the man in charge of the technical production side of it, Steve Pickering, a man really who's seen the whole concept through, Gary Doty, the Lynx man, who is a vital part of that, Nigel Pedersen, who's only in his mid-20s, and back in the workshop, Ross Besky has just made brackets and made all the mountings, the engineering side of it, that's made it possible. It's been quite a development since late January. It was used, of course, in the Castrol 6-hour. Here we see it from the tail of Robert Holden's bike, looking back towards Rob McElnay. He's got one looking forward on his Yamaha. And Peter Clifford, as you know, it's a very, very difficult thing to achieve.
Yes, it's a real technological wonder, this, and very, very lucky to be able to see it and see such a good view of what's going on right in front of us as we watch Rob casually, carefully running the Yamaha around the Thunderdrome, very carefully warming up the tyres, and warming up the tyres is absolutely critical to this race because the tyres played such a big part in the first event.
And this is the way they will line up. The Swede Anders Anderson, Gary Knoll from England, Rob McElnay from Britain, Roger Marshall, England, David Lucci, Robert Holden, locals, Dowson, Kevin McGee, Malcolm Campbell, Scollier, Sean Gallagher, who crashed last weekend. Peter Goddard's gone well. As you can see, it's quite a big field. Tony Armstrong down from Queensland, the reigning Australian endurance race champion. And you were saying, Peter Clifford, that tyres are critical to this, more so than usually because of the unusual nature of the racetrack.
Yes, everybody's had a real fright around the Thunderdrome, the way that it has absolutely destroyed the right-hand side of the front tyres. And it's caused the teams to go to some rather unusual lengths to try and cure the problem. Several of the riders have decided to choose extraordinarily hard compound front tyres so they'll put up with the wear around the 2 very, very fast right-handers, although they realise that this is going to cause problems on the few left-handers that remain in the circuit. And in fact, the Yamaha team of Dowson and McGee have both elected to use actually old hard compound tyres because they never expected to need this compound here today and haven't got any new ones available. So they're going to be using some old hard compound tyres, whereas other riders have got just the new soft compound tyres.
In fact, Peter, so critical is the tyre shortage at the moment that Roger Marshall rushed up to me immediately after I did that piece to camera just a little while ago and took away the tyre of Mike Dowson to use in practice next weekend at Lakeside.
Yeah, well, Marshall is one of those with a new hard compound tyre, and it's going to be interesting to see how these riders cope. The left-handers are going to be really tricky if they've got the hard compound on the front because the tyre is liable to tuck under on them, and yet they'll have an advantage through the fast corners. And there now is the bike-mounted camera on McElnay's Yamaha. He's using a soft compound front, just as he did in the first leg, and that's bound to wear out towards the end, but at least it won't cause him any frights on the few left-handers.
That's the SO 211 Michelin, 212 Michelin. The 211 as the bike is being wheeled away. So a problem for Rob McElnay, the defending Swann Series champion, as his bike goes off the grid, and they're all in ready to 8 laps, 33.6 kilometres. They get away, and it's Michael Dowson punches well. He actually lost the toss with Kevin McGee and got the more worn of the 2 second-hand tyres that they had. McGee falls back to 4th place, is almost slotted back to 5th.
But Campbell way back in 7th position. Campbell just blew the start, and he is right back in the field.
Roger Marshall's well up in the field. He's running 3rd at the moment. He said after 2 laps in the first race, I want racing, I was just touring. If that's Roger Marshall's accent.
Yes, a really brave move for Dowson because he threw that Yamaha into the tight left-hander. He's got that hard compound tyre, which might be a problem through the tight lefts, but he threw the Yamaha in and he survived it. Now he's taking advantage through the very fast right-hand curves of the Superdome.
Peter Goddard's got a great start. He's slotted into second place behind Michael Dowson. McGee's fourth. Roger Marshall's just in front of him there. Skull Bandit Suzuki third.
Mal Campbell's up to fifth position, right on McGee's tail.
The man that couldn't quite catch him in the previous race, but Campbell has been operating on next year's experimental Michelins. They're experimental at the moment for next year. He's got radials all round. Everybody else with cross-ply fronts. So Campbell's the man who's had the tyre advantage so far in the series. We look at Goddard at the moment, but let's have a look on Robert Holden's bike at Tony Armstrong, following him on 82. That gives you an idea of the tremendous speed of these bikes through the flip-flop, up the back straight at Calder.
Peaking at about 240 kilometres an hour up the back straight, and just look how Tony Armstrong closes in under brakes.
And Kevin McGee's third now, and Michael Dowson leads by 1.6 seconds. As we look back again to Tony Armstrong on 82, the Suzuki that used to be raced by Rob Phillis. Michael Dowson, a very handy lead indeed. He goes out to 2.1 seconds over Goddard, who's now overtaken by McGee. So McGee is second, Goddard goes no sir, hangs on to second. McGee is third, Marshall's fourth.
And I'm sure McGee backed off on the brakes there, conscious of the fact that that front tyre might give up going into the left-hander.
It's Campbell now up to fourth, behind McGee. Both of them on the tail of Goddard. Far less experienced rider than this McGee-Campbell duo.
And Dowson goes out to 2.8 seconds as McGee now on the 1000 Yamaha, monoing it, and going for them all is Campbell, three abreast on the dome. Right up on McGee's shoulder, into third place.
Goddard back to fourth.
Indeed, in no time flat. Goddard from second to fourth.
Just blown off by the 1000cc bikes, the 1000cc Yamaha and the NR 750. The 750 Meraki couldn't keep up. That's Dowson leading. Then comes McGee, Campbell, Goddard, Marshall right on his tail.
Fabulous speed and determination on the bowl back there. This is 8 laps, 33.6 kilometres. Really quick stuff. Goddard getting sideways, getting the bike all loose. The Moriwaki Honda that kicked him off, but he rode it side saddle off the bike to a halt at Oran Park last weekend. Further back on 07 is Robert Holden. And Tony Armstrong behind him. Michael Dowson's leads 2.68 seconds over Kevin McGee, teammates. And look at the way he's got that thing sliding and howling as he brings it onto the front straight, and as he did at Oran Park last weekend in both heats. He streams away so determined to get up 2 wins. This weekend, he's lost a chance of 2 wins, but going for this one in a most determined fashion, and Malcolm Campbell out after Kevin McGee, the man that's got the big international chance next year, the chance that Malcolm Campbell thinks he's just as deserving of, and is very determined to prove it back here on home base in front of Kevin McGee's fans.
3 seconds separates Mike Dowson to this dueling pair. Then another 3 seconds back behind us again. Kevin McGee mono wheels it at just on 160 miles an hour on the bowl.
And it looked as though the NR 750 had the power to draw alongside the 1000cc Yamaha in the mid-range, but just on top end the 1000 goes away, and McGee was able to hold out Campbell on the brakes.
Very different lines there from McGee and Campbell. Doesn't work out much differently in terms of the way they come off. Back onto the flat circuit.
It seems that the 1000cc Yamaha won't quite turn in as well as the Honda, and McGee has a few problems running wide through the corner, whereas the light and more nimble NR 750 can be turned quicker and then squirted away.
2.6 seconds still the lead of Dowson over his Marlboro Yamaha dealer teammate Kevin McGee. Then it's Team Honda Australia, Malcolm Campbell in third place, trying to pressure McGee into an error, pressure into overworking his front tyres. Very different bikes, very different tyre situations. This man with Michelin technicians out from France, trying different construction, different compound, the tyres for next year for Europe.
1 minute 48.19 seconds a lap on Michael Dowson.
And averaging about 140 kilometres an hour as they go now on to lap 4. the end of this lap brings up half race distance.
Rob Scottier's moved up into 4th position, eclipsing Roger Marshall.
Campbell closing once more on the tail of the Yamaha as they sweep round the base of the Thunderdome, but not as close as he was this time on the last lap. We'll see if he can get sucked into the slipstream of the Yamaha. That's the leader, number 1, Michael Dowson. Campbell, he did just get into the slipstream, but not close enough to make a passing manoeuvre. And there's really no way that he can go around the outside of McGee here.
The two men who clashed here in the World Superbike race last year touched, and Kevin McGee was off his bike down the Calder front straight at 240 kilometres an hour when Campbell moved over a little bit, and McGee thought at the time braked a little bit early.
Oh, and a bit of a slide there from McGee. I wonder if McGee's abusing the rear tyre because he's not that confident in the front. He might be going into the corners a little bit slower and desperately trying to get on the gas harder.
He was very keen to get on the gas nice and hard and early. And here, Anders Anderson, following Robert Holden, 2 Suzukis, a locally developed Action Suzuki. And again, through the back section of circuit, and that really does give you an idea of how quickly they're travelling as they go through that quick right and left-hand kink as they come off the hill and go up the back straight towards the second series of S's and Glow Weave corner. Michael Dowson, in the meantime, completes 4 laps, half race distance.
And you can see Anders' knees scraping the deck there with his red leathers, borrowed from Michael Dowson because his own have become too stiff. Holden now squirting away from Anders Anderson down the straight. That's back to the second place battle with McGee still leading Campbell. Campbell looking for a way up the inside, but there's no room.
But the interesting thing is, Peter, that while these two are dicing furiously amongst themselves, they're also catching Michael Dowson.
Yes, they are. They've about
2.35 seconds is my gap.
Yep, that's
and
right.
It's closing well.
Yes, they've pulled in a few valuable tenths, so they really are honking this pair. McGee on the 1000 Yamaha, 5 valves per cylinder. That's pretty incredible technology that's going into Formula One car racing. Campbell on this oval pistoned Honda, 8 valves a cylinder and 2 conrods per piston. And that's banned in Formula One car racing. A really revolutionary engine in which Malcolm Campbell earlier today set history in world automotive engineering by winning a race with such an engine.
And now, as we see both riders slipping and sliding a little bit there, it's interesting to note that all the top men made changes to their machine between the legs. Dowson changed his suspension, as did McGee, and Campbell had a few tweaks as well. That's because these machines, these riders have very little experience on the new circuit using the Thunderdome and are still having to make changes to try and get the bikes to work under very exacting conditions. McGee seemed to just gain a few yards on Campbell through that section.
At 1.9 seconds, the gap first back to second places. Dowson here on bike number 1 comes round to complete lap 5, and the image he sees behind him is a closer, bigger one, with his teammate chasing him and Malcolm Campbell haunting him, so that there's only about 2 seconds spreading over the first 3 bikes on lap 6.
And Dowson knows there's no way he can afford to ease off. He might assume that McGee wouldn't be too desperate to overtake him as teammate, but he certainly knows that the Honda man, Malcolm Campbell, will try anything.
The race leader, beautiful shot from above, giving an idea of the incredible speed round the bowl there, where, as we said earlier, February the 28th next year, the first ever NASCAR stock car race on a banked oval circuit to be held outside America is scheduled for Calder Park near Melbourne.
I don't know if you could pick out there, but Malcolm Campbell has a different line to McGee on that corner. He dives off the banking, makes an early apex, and then drifts wide in the middle of the last right-hander of the Thunderdome before coming back again. An interesting variation on the line, which normally just hugs the inside.
They're all flying. They've broken into 47s now, compared with the touring cars, which went faster because they were up high on the banking, and they were therefore very much faster through the corners, and they were doing only 42s, 5 seconds faster. You can see the closing gap between the 3 of them. McGee's 1 second exactly behind his teammate. He closes under brakes. Malcolm Campbell's less than a second behind him. And so very shortly, and in fact there are only 2 laps remaining, It will be, and that's Robert Holden on 07, the other camera. Look at the camera on the tail end of it, just poking out through the fairing there, all taped into position, as now onto the straight, 2 laps remaining, 8.4 kilometres. They go down the straight, Dowson, McGee, Campbell.
And the old adage still remains, we'll never put a camera on a bike, because you know what happens, they always stop.
Now, interestingly, the front tyre situation seems to be working well for the Yamaha men. We haven't noticed them have any disastrous slides on the left-handers, and they're certainly getting through the right-hand as well. We've now got the camera in from the helicopter. You can see the bikes running wide up on the banking between the 2 fast corners at the end of the circuit. We're rushing down to the second long right-hander of the Thunderdome, and perhaps we can pick up that line, because there goes McGee hugging the inside. Behind him, Campbell will have drifted wide, cut back in again. McGee now swings left hard, trying to get the power on desperately, trying to get it on early to get a good drive away from that tight left-hand corner.
About a second still between these 2 teammates, and bike numbers 1, 2, they're running in real formation order. It's 1, 2, 3 in positions, 1, 2, 3. Dowson, McGee, Campbell. 3 of the great talents in Australian motorcycle racing, absolutely blitzing the imported riders from Sweden and from Britain. And down the back straight goes Kevin McGee, and he's only half a second now behind Michael Dowson, and he's demonic under brakes. He closes right up to within about 3 bike lengths of him as he streams away from Malcolm Campbell. And can he, in the remaining 1 corner and 1 lap, do anything about the race lead? Dowson's won 2 heats. McGee hasn't won 1 yet. Campbell's won 1. And mono-wheeling while he's sideways cocked up and the back wheel sliding comes Kevin McGee onto the straight for the last time. Down now towards the Thunderdome. This will be sensationally fast round the banking.
McGee all slight. You see him cut inside. He tried to get the power on early, whacked the power on, and it came round. As he lost the fraction of a second, it makes a difference between winning and losing.
If my timing's right, they've not only broken 47s earlier in the race, I suspect they've broken into 46s if I got it right. So they really are ripping time off the best that they've done previously. Dowson leads McGee. Not many places for him to pass.
McGee closes on the brakes.
Campbell comes with him.
Gets a little bit too close to the inside curve there. If he'd have been closer, he would have had a look down the inside here on the left-hander if he hadn't made that mistake going on to the Thunderdome.
Beautiful through there. Absolutely tight and on the early with the power, sitting the bike up early. Dowson now's crossed up under brakes as he goes down to Valvoline corner at the end of the main straight. They don't use very much of it. They come out now and have to hook right and left to the S's. Then head up to the hill, and through the kink here will be critical as they go down the back straight. Breaking down the end of there will be on for everybody as Kevin McGee fires number 2 as hard as he dare as they head off now down the back straight, and his real last chance as he goes down on the brakes. He draws level with his teammate. Both bikes skittish and going sideways, and McGee gets offline. Dowson holds it. Kevin stays there, falls back towards Malcolm Campbell, and therefore almost certainly will be victory to Michael Dowson on bike number 1 as he hangs on. He gets it all right. McGee tried everything and didn't quite pull it off. In a brilliant last-minute dive 2 for the line as Malcolm Campbell goes at McGee. It is victory, though, for Michael Dowson from Kevin McGee. Did hang on. Took second place on bike number 2. So it's Yamaha's 1 and 2. Malcolm Campbell third by just a whisker in that thrilling finish on the last lap of a race that was done in 14 minutes, 26.33 seconds, averaging very nearly 140 kilometres an hour, including the race start, 139.7 for the 8 laps. And that really was, Peter Clifford, pretty breathless stuff. Absolutely on the limit.
I think that was incredible riding from all 3 men there. Terrific stuff on the last lap from McGee to try and go down the inside of Dowson. He only had 1 chance. He made that slight error which cost him going on to the Thunderdome on that last lap, but he made up the ground, tried to go down the inside of Dowson, and Dowson, beautiful stuff. He just held his ground. He knew he had the advantage. He could come across the front of McGee. There was no reason for him to give ground, and he held his ground. and of course McGee was left with nothing to do. He had to back off. In fact, he almost ran into the back of Dowson as he had to ease off.
McGee very concerned about what was going on behind him as Malcolm Campbell just tucked his head down hard and went, and the man with the checkered flag said, "This is no place for me." He had to back away. And in the meantime, of course, Michael Dowson had taken victory and continues to hold his Swann Series lead in very fast, very determined and brilliantly skillful racing to complete round 2, 4 heats of this 3 rounds and the 6 heats altogether of this 10th Swann Insurance International Motorcycle Series. That's been such an important stepping stone. Have a look as Kevin McGee tried for everything through the kink here. He'd mono-wheeled it off the top hill, and then look how hard he was punching. Michael Dowson was giving him no room down the right-hand side, but suddenly he pulled over, was looking for a good entry into the S's, and McGee said, "I'm going down the inside," and then they had to look at his back wheel. It was up in the air and it was going sideways everywhere, and Malcolm Campbell's watching and saying, "Boy, if that's what you do to your teammate, I'd hate to have enemies." And in fact, Kevin McGee had very nearly hit the lead, but he had to pull back, and in fact he could easily, so easily have collided with Michael Dowson. That's the reason he ran wide. He was actually on line, but Michael Dowson, in taking his line, total blind commitment, saying, "Boy, I'm not giving way, this is my corner." Michael Dowson forced Kevin McGee to sit it up, go offline, and thereby get back there and be threatened and very nearly overtaken by Malcolm Campbell. Quite sensational stuff. And have a look here at Malcolm Campbell. He tucks down McGee, looks over his left shoulder, doesn't even see him, and Campbell just goes for it. He opens up the taps on one of the fastest motorbikes in world motorcycle racing at the moment, with some 160 horsepower on a bike weighing only 150 kilos. That's probably about 5 horsepower more than the 500cc Grand Prix machine that Wayne Gardner used to win this year's World 500 Championship. But of course, Gardner's bike is very, very much lighter than that. It's faster in terms of lap times, but not as powerful as that revolutionary NR 750 Honda. And Kevin McGee, the big, bright, lovely smile, and he just thinks it's a whole pile of fun. An absolute ball. Mick Smith there from Team Honda Australia, and all of them enthused by sensational entertainment that will be, of course, followed by next weekend at Lakeside Circuit, a very rough one, and one, remember,